Hi everybody, I'm sorry that your Sunday school lesson is late today. I actually did record it yesterday, but I don't know, my phone is old or got too many pictures on it. I'm not exactly sure what's up with it, but we had some trouble with it, so I'm re-recording this video. And this week the lesson is about the crucifixion of Jesus. So this week is actually Palm Sunday. And this was the day that Jesus rode into town, and everyone was so excited to see him and wanted to be a part of what was going on. They were like essentially treating him like a celebrity. And then the next week, they're asking for him to be crucified. And not just asking, but it's an angry mob of people who are going to the governor to have Jesus crucified. And so we have a couple of Bible verses that we're going to talk about today. I'll include those so that you can look at them yourself. But the first one is about Pilate. He's the governor at that time, and it was common for a prisoner to be pardoned. And so during this Passover festival, and so the people brought Jesus to him to say, like, we want him crucified, we want him dead, we don't want any part of the things that he's saying anymore. And he asked him, why? What has he done? And no one could really say specific reasons. They just said, crucify him, crucify him. So he, not really wanting to get involved, came up with this idea that he would propose that the freed prisoner could be Jesus, who clearly has done nothing wrong, or it could be this guy named Barabbas, who was a violent criminal. He was paying for his crimes in prison, and the people said, free Barabbas, we want Jesus to die. So at this time, there's kind of a theme in what we're talking about today, and it's about being alone. Jesus went from everyone cheering for him and loving him and wanting to basically hang on every word he says to people calling for his death. And that must have felt very lonely. He must have felt very alone at that time. And so the next thing that we're going to talk about is when they took Jesus and they crucified him, the way that the soldiers treated Jesus, the way that the people who stood there and mocked Jesus while he was on the cross, the things that they did. The soldiers took his clothes and gambled for his clothes right at his feet. They made a sign that went above his head that said, King of the Jews. They asked him if he would like wine. They kind of poked fun at him. People stood and watched him die and jeered at him and made fun of him and asked him, if you are so special, what are you doing there? Free yourself. And while there were some of Jesus's followers and people that really cared about Jesus as witnesses that day, there was one person who was right next to him that saw the significance of what was going on. This guy was truly a criminal on one side of Jesus, a criminal on the other. And he saw this opportunity to ask to be part of what Jesus was I want to be with you in paradise. And Jesus said, I see that you believe and you will be there. While the other person that was crucified next to him mocked him and just really couldn't grasp what was going on at the time. And so I'm going to send you these Bible verses. I'm going to try to make it a little bit shorter rather than read everything to you, but I encourage you to read them. It'll give you a good idea about what was going on at the time that Jesus was crucified and really how people treated him and how Almost kind of how it went from this great love to this great hatred for him at the time. I think I said before that, it was Palm Sunday and they were celebrating Passover. And the moment that Jesus died was actually the time of Passover when people would kind of have their meal. And if that's right. But it's significant because Passover was celebrated because there was a sacrifice, and they considered Jesus like the lamb that was sacrificed. Or I guess, I don't know if they did at the time, but it was like a symbol that Jesus was the lamb that was sacrificed on the cross for our sins, whereas they sacrificed animals in the Old Testament, but also in the time of Moses when they were freeing the Israelites from Egypt. And so that was a big deal, so that the firstborn wasn't killed, but that was part of the plagues that struck the Egyptians. So anyway, at the time that they would have had the Passover meal, the curtain in the, I don't have my notes, so I'm getting all this funky, but the curtain that was to separate the most important part of the temple, it was the temple that was said to house the Ark of the Covenant, and was very significant because it was the holiest place in the temple. And the curtain separated that from the people. So only, the priest would handle the curtain. No one was to touch it. No one was to go behind it. And from, I read a little bit about it. This curtain is pretty significant in the fact that it's very thick fabric, 4 inches thick. It's a humongous curtain, 60 feet, this way or that way. It took 300 priests to move it around and manipulate it to do what they wanted to do with it. And that curtain tore from top to bottom. And at that moment that Jesus died, and it was significant because it said Jesus' death has created, there's no separation for us. He has been sacrificed, and at this point we're able to go to heaven and spend eternity with him there. And so I'm kind of going to look at this just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. The author of the Sunday school lesson, who is in ministry himself, talked about sometimes his struggles that he feeling depressed and feeling lonely and feeling sad, and how at a time in his life where he felt all of those things, but also felt, I don't know, I guess guilty or ashamed for feeling those things because he's a minister. He felt like he shouldn't feel that way. He read Psalms 22, and Psalm 22 is right before Psalm 23, which is significant because it's the one that everybody knows about, how David wrote about how God would never leave him, and I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, but I fear no evil because you comfort me. And David was a great king. He was, David and Goliath. He did something amazing. People loved him. But, and David really wrote about how God was with him, and he had all these Psalms that were, meant to be praises to God. But Psalm 22 is probably his darkest times, where he talks about, God help me, hurry and help me. A pack of wild dogs can come at me and pin me to the ground. My heart is a blob of melted wax in my gut. I'm dry as a bone. I mean, it's not really things that we would say today, but him at this time, that meant that he was low. He was the lowest of lows. And so for somebody like David, somebody like a minister, to feel they're at their lowest of lows, just know that you can come out of that. If you feel alone, if you feel sad or depressed, there's a lot of things going on right now that we don't have control over. There's a lot of things, especially you as being young and in high school, and you have all these things going on and you had plans and expectations. It's okay to feel sad about that, but don't let it overtake the way that you feel. Don't let it, pull yourself out of it, and know that even David had these times where he felt very low, and then in the next chapter he feels comfort and he feels peace, and God can do that for you too. So I wanted to tell you that, while this time it can be sort of a lonely time because we're isolated from our friends, from our normal schedules. It can also be a time that you can maybe do things that you wouldn't normally feel like you had time to do. You can make an effort to read your Bible every day. You can make an effort to pray. Some people say that maybe it won't do anything for me, but how will I know unless I try? And sometimes prayer is not about getting what you want. It's not about hearing God's voice. Sometimes it's just about a peace that can come over you so that you can get through a tough time. So I wanted to mention that to you. I also want to encourage you, like I said, to try something different. Do something that you normally think you wouldn't have time for, and reach out to other people that might be feeling alone right now. There's a lot of people going through the same things that you are. And so using Instagram or using, something else that you can reach out to somebody that may be having a hard time, or just somebody that if you pray about it and God puts that person on your heart, you can be the one that makes a difference. And I want to encourage you to think in a way of, if you pray about that and you ask for, what should I do? Who could use some encouragement? It's not necessarily going to be, you find their name on a piece of paper or you hear a voice. Sometimes it's just a thought in your head, of a memory of someone, or their name just comes to you. You're thinking about it. And so that's a way for God to reach out, and it's a way that you can reach out. So spend some time doing things that you like. Spend some time trying something new, and don't let this time be a time that's wasted. I find that when I know that I'm wasting time is when I'm playing games on my phone and I'm not even winning. I'm just playing it. Or I'm looking through Instagram for like the third time because maybe something new will pop up. Use that time and do something good for yourself or for somebody else. And have a great week. And I encourage you to look up some things about Easter. Just really go for it. Have a good week, you guys. Bye.